Pema or Pima Chodron, depending on who you talk to, wrote this: "You can cruise through life not letting anything touch you, but if you really want to live fully, if you want to enter into life, enter into genuine relationships with other people, with animals, with the world situation, you're definitely going to have the experience of feeling provoked, of getting hooked. You're not just going to feel bliss. The message is that when those feelings emerge, this is not a failure. This is the chance to cultivate unconditional friendliness toward your perfect and imperfect self." There's no doubt that this talk echoes a little bit about what we talked about in the broken talk, but there's more than enough in that area that we could have a whole series of talks just on that. The difference with this talk from the broken talk, as I see it, is that this talk is more about how the world sees us. It's an issue of how the world sees us and what we do with the judgment that we perceive we're getting. The world says we're too fat or too thin, too easy or too uptight, that being independent is important, that being alone is pathetic, that marriage is good or bad, that being single is great or sad, and on and on and on. Traditional churches go so far as to tell us that we are sinners, all of us, no matter what we do. The values and information being thrown at us can have us flummoxed and wondering constantly, what is wrong with me? So here's my news flash for March 29th. There's nothing wrong with you. I was reflecting over all of the talks from this past month, all of the Henry Nouwen talks that we did, and they all seem to lead right up to this one. How we're chosen, regardless of what condition we're in. How we're blessed all the time, regardless of what it looks like. How we're broken in so many ways and yet still so beautiful. And how we are given and how we give to the world every day, every moment. And finally, how all of that can look like a real mess. And it's still beautiful. This quote has come up in many different ways. I've heard it phrased differently, but I really like this photo. Beautiful mess. Just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. Our lives can be chaotic and messy, and we trip and we stumble, and that doesn't take away from the magnificence of any of it. There can be what we perceive as terrible flaws in us, and let's be honest here about that. Only we let that get in our way. Okay, I'll talk about myself. Only I let it get in my way. The truth is, nobody's tripping me up. Nobody is tripping me in my world. My expectations cause my disappointments. My perceptions create my reality. My eating an entire box of Girl Scout cookies causes my own tummy to hurt and causes me to have a headache. It sure was. All mine. But don't misunderstand me here, because I still love to blame other people. I love it. I blame them for my flaws and my imperfections and all the stuff that gets in my way. And in some situations, it actually works. Yay. It actually, can seem or look like someone else is doing it. It can look like it's about somebody else, and it never really is. It never really is. The moment of my own awakening, my realizing how perfectly flawed I am, is the moment when none of that other stuff matters. And that's the same moment that everything falls into place. There's a story that many of you are probably familiar with, and I think it's always worth hearing again. And it's the story of the water bearer who carries 2 jugs of water on a stick across her shoulders, and one water jug is beautiful and perfect, and the other has a crack in it. And every day she goes down to the river and she fills them with water, and she walks back to her home, and every day the one that's cracked loses half of its water. And for 2 years, this is going on. And after 2 years, the cracked water pot finally can't stand it anymore and says, I have to apologize. I have to apologize to you. And the water bearer says, well, what are you apologizing for? And the pot says, well, you work really hard and you go down to the river every day and you bring this water back and you're only bringing 1.5 pots back because of my flaw. My flaw is causing you to lose value in your work. It's causing you to waste your time. And the water bearer felt really sorry for this little cracked pot, and said, I want you to pay attention to something on our next walk back. I want you to notice the wildflowers. So the cracked pot said, fine, okay. And so as they're walking along, it noticed all the beautiful flowers and was really moved by them. And they got back to the house, and the water bearer said, did you see that? And the pot said, yeah, they were beautiful. So the next morning, the water bearer goes down to the water and fills up the pots. By the time they get back to the house, half the water's gone from the pot, and the pot feels bad again. And it's just like feeling terrible about this flaw. So the water bearer says, did you notice where the flowers were? Because I only planted seeds on the side of the path that you're on. And because I knew about your flaw. I knew about the crack. So I planted seeds only on the side that you're on. That's where the wildflowers are growing. I took advantage of the flaw that you had to create something beautiful from it. I'm just going to let that sink in for a minute. I took advantage of the flaw that I knew about to allow you to create something beautiful from it. And the water bearer ends by saying, if you were not just the way you are, I would have not had such beauty to grace my home. Gregory Boyles writes in the book Tattoos on the Heart, he said, Jesus says you are the light of the world. I like even more what Jesus doesn't say. He does not say, one day, if you're more perfect and try really hard, you'll be light. He doesn't say, if you play by the rules, cross your T's and dot your I's, then maybe you'll become light. No, he says straight out, you're light. It is the truth of who you are, waiting only for you to discover it. There's this video floating around on Facebook and YouTube, and it's called This Girl Can. Have you guys seen that? Anybody? It's a video montage of girls and women. And depending on who you ask, these women are not skinny or curvy or fluffy or full-bodied. They're women of size, and they're insanely athletic. And it's so energizing and fun to watch these women doing what they're doing. Because many of these women who look like us, like normal people, are playing fiercely at the activities that they're doing, and not a single thought to, I wonder how I look doing this. I wonder what people are thinking about me as I do this. They aren't working out in private until they look good enough to go to the gym. They aren't making sure that they're ready to be seen before they get out there. They're getting out there, flaws and all, exactly in the condition they're in. And it's so powerful. They're not waiting, and they're not caring. It's, here I am. It's so amazing. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the messages that we get from the world, and I was thinking about some of the stories that I read as a child, some that are still my favorites today. And I realized that there was a theme like running through all of them that's related to this idea of being perfect in our imperfection. How are we doing? Am I still even? Okay. The first one that came to mind was The Ugly Duckling. It's a story of how our perception of ourselves can be completely untrue, and what we're told about ourselves, not true. Another favorite of mine is Jonathan Livingston Seagull, who struggles to be his true self amongst all those who would never see him that way and who want to keep pulling him down to be like them. And what I thought was so interesting is, as I was rereading it, it's actually described as a homily about self-perfection, which I never knew that. And so when Jonathan goes off to learn from the master teachers, he's taught the wisdom of begin by knowing that you have already arrived. Isn't that great? And then, of course, for me, the most powerful story about this of all time is the Velveteen Rabbit. The conversation that the rabbit has with the skin horse is such an important lesson, because the rabbit doesn't understand this whole real thing. The rabbit got left in the backyard, and the real rabbits came up and were like, you're not real, and kind of judged him. And so he goes to the skin horse, who is the font of wisdom in the toy room, and the thing about the skin horse is he isn't snotty about his wisdom. He explains everything very patiently. He's very kind. And he says to the rabbit, he says, real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time. Not just to play with, but really loves you. Then you become real. And the rabbit asks, does it hurt? Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you're real, you don't mind being hurt. Well, does it happen all at once, like being wound up, he asked, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. In our culture, when we talk about perfection, which gets talked about a lot, we're often confusing the concept of perfection with the truth of being real. I mean, go to a grocery store, and in that checkout line, look at any of those magazine covers. The perfection on that cover, and I put it in quotes, perfection, is as far from the truth as I am from running a marathon. And that's really far. And yet so many of us, young people and not so young people, can be fooled by those images and forget that those people are human and as flawed as we are. If we could see what those pictures actually looked like before somebody got their hands on them, we'd be mighty surprised. So today is Palm Sunday, which if I was a really, a good, obedient minister, I would be doing a Palm Sunday talk. But we're approaching Easter. Easter is next week. And so for me, growing up Jewish, Easter meant Cadbury eggs and getting up at 4 a.m. for my friends and I to secretly deliver Passover bunny baskets to all of our friends. I missed that. There was a moment in time where suddenly it wasn't safe anymore to do that. But it was really cool for a while. But for most folks, this holiday is about celebrating the death of the human Jesus and the resurrection of the perfect Christ. So let's poke the bee's nest a little bit, shall we? In honor of world events. What I've noticed is that some folks forget about the first part and meld the human man into the consciousness of perfection of the second part. Jesus was not a perfect man. He had struggles. He had inner turmoil. He had moments when his faith, which was Jewish, not Christian, was shaken to the core. And according to some sources, he actually loved a woman that was not the dream choice of his Jewish mother. And yet, the man is put on the pedestal of perfection based on his teachings, which were incredibly wise and not all accurately attributed to him. But he's put on that pedestal because of what may or may not have happened after his human body's death. And then dogmatically, we are all measured up to that perfection. Yikes. What a setup, man. What a total setup. It's impossible to live like that. We can get close and not judge ourselves for it. It's a tough setup. And so we can strive for it, and we can be gentle with ourselves when we don't quite make it, when we miss that mark. However, that's the kind of perfection that's thrown at us. Another example of someone that we hold in high regard as being perfect, who is actually perfectly flawed, is Mother Teresa. During her lifetime, she sacrificed comfort and ease to live among some of the most disenfranchised people in the world. She worked hard, she went without so much, and she showed all of us what true compassion in action looked like. She also kept a journal. And she requested that her private thoughts be destroyed after her death. She didn't want them shared with the world, because she didn't want us to know that she had doubts. So someone went ahead and published her writings anyway, and at first I was appalled by this. I was just like, oh my God, how disrespectful. What an invasion. And I was appalled by it. And then I found the gift in it. It was important for them to do that. It meant so much to know that this woman that we have put up here was right here. She struggled. She began to wonder if God was even there anymore. She felt empty a lot of the time. And her faith was just constantly being shaken. And knowing that about her kind of makes it okay for me. It's like, oh, that I can relate to. I can't relate to that, but this, yes. So it was such a gift, because it means we're all doing okay. We're all doing okay. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? So, like with Jesus and Gandhi and Joan of Arc and the Dalai Lama, we put these people up high. And even they themselves, a lot of the time, are thinking, whoa, it's really precarious up here. Yikes. You guys, they're dealing with their inner challenges, their moments of doubt, their moments of humanity, and then they have to deal with all of us looking up at them and going to them and looking at them for every answer for our lives of how we should be in the world. My God, that's a lot of pressure. It's pressure to be absolutely perfect as opposed to perfectly flawed. So even though the publishing of those journals was this horrible invasion of her privacy, it helped me. It helped me in those moments when I'm like, God, I'm not feeling you right now. Are you even there? To know that other people struggled with that is such a gift. So I hope she forgives us for doing that. One more visit with Henry Nouwen before we bid him farewell this month. He wrote, I know that the fact that I'm always searching for God, always struggling to discover the fullness of love, always yearning for the complete truth, tells me that I have already been given a taste of God, of love, and of truth. I can only look for something that I have to some degree already found. We were in the light before we entered into the darkness. We were at home before we started to search for a home. We were perfect before we started to believe that we were flawed. A few years ago, a friend asked me to write a song based on some thoughts that she had. And she said it was okay to say it was her, so thank you, Diane. And that song came to mind when I was working on this talk, because the song is this journey from recognizing Spirit's true presence to moving through those moments of, oh, it's not there, not feeling it, where is it? To then the remembering of, oh, it never left. And it's a beautiful piece, and I was really honored to bring music to it. And I think that's what this is all about. I think it's a remembering. I think it's a remembering who we truly are, not who the world or any other human being says we are. Not making what happened to us become the story of our real lives, our true story, our real story. Not allowing moments of forgetting to become the reality for the rest of our lives on the earth. So we all know how good it feels when someone else lets us off the hook, right? When you've done something and you're like, oh, and the person goes, oh, you know what, don't worry about it. It's like, oh. So imagine how good that would feel if we could do that for ourselves. Like, when can we let ourselves off the hook? Wouldn't we want that for ourselves all of the time? I mean, what do we gain by seeing ourselves as flawed and broken or unworthy? And what do we risk by seeing ourselves as whole, chosen, and perfectly flawed? Perfect in our complete and total normal imperfection. Jane Vennard in Fully Awake and Truly Alive said, "We don't practice to make perfect, we practice to make possible. We don't practice to get somewhere, we practice to know we are already there." Remembering. So before I close, there's a fine line that came up for me in talking with a friend. There's a fine line that came up that I want to just establish a little bit of a difference before we say goodbye. And that's the recognizing who we truly are versus letting our ego have a party. So all of what I said today is true. And those who know the truth about themselves and those who know that this is true about themselves will never be the ones telling you about it. They'll never be the ones bragging about it or needing to prove it. I'm perfect. Hi. Did you know that I'm perfect? Those are the ones you got to watch out for. Because the ones who aren't telling you are the ones who have walked through the dark nights of the soul. They're the ones who've done the deep self-reflection. They're the ones who have some pretty darn impressive scars for how they've learned all of their life lessons and how they've gotten to this place of just being able to go, perfectly flawed. Yeah, I can accept that. I can go with that. And they will also usually be some of the most grateful people you've ever met. Because they're the ones who made it through that moment and are like, oh, I'm still alive. Whew. Awesome. Discovering the truth about ourselves, capital T, truth about ourselves, is a quiet, sometimes painful, and sometimes painfully funny moment of self-reflection. So I just really wanted to establish that difference before we closed. And I'm going to close with this quote from Neil Donald Walsh that I read it and I thought, that kind of catches the theme pretty well. I tell you, the day will come when you will review your life and be thankful for every minute of it. Every hurt, every sorrow, every joy, every celebration, every moment of your life will be a treasure to you, for you will see the utter perfection of the design. You will stand back from the weaving and see the tapestry, and you will weep at the beauty of it. Indeed. Let's do some prayer. Whew. This is something we get to learn over and over and over again. As I finished writing the talk yesterday, I said to God, so I'm done now with this, right? I've learned this part. Can we move on to something more? Can I move to a higher level philosophy class or something? Because I'm done with this. And of course, the answer was no answer, just a smile. And so we let ourselves off the hook, and then When we're back on it, we remember to let ourselves off again. And when we're back on it, we remember to let ourselves off again. And whenever we can, we help other people and let themselves, to help them get off their hook. Because what I know to be true is that Spirit, God, Creator, Love does not make mistakes. Everything created has a purpose. And as we each discover that purpose, which can change, as we continue to explore and find what our purpose is for the right now, let's let ourselves off the hook for whatever has happened before this right now. Let's remember. Let's remember that we are chosen all the time by love, by the one, by life. We're chosen by the very fact that we woke up this morning. Life chose us for one more day. And we are blessed in that. And that our flaws and our brokenness are what bring more beauty to the world. When we recognize in ourselves what is beautiful and broken, we can allow ourselves to water those wildflowers, to bring more beauty and value into the world and into our lives. And then we can give from there. And so as we move into our day and we move into this coming week, let's make a decision today that we're just going to tell the world to take a break. Thanks for all the messages. Thanks for all the information. I'm not going to listen for a couple days. I'm going to listen to myself. I'm going to listen to my heart. I'm going to listen to my truth. I'm going to listen to Spirit, that I know that God is, I understand God. And I'm going to remember what's real. What's big R, capital R, real. And so as I continue to hold those who have reached out, I hold them in prayer, and I hold them in consciousness, and I hold them in that space of remembering who they are. And I surround each and every one of us with safety and wisdom and strength and patience. Blessings, blessings, and deep, deep gratitude. Thank you, God. Thank you. Ashe.